And welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swail. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with State Representative Gary Gates, who has proudly served the Fort Bend County constituents of Texas House District 28 since 2020. He currently serves as the chairman of the Land and Resource Management Committee. As a successful businessman and community leader, Gary has made it his mission to bring his innovative ideas and business acumen to the Texas legislature. Representative Gary Gates, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for letting me be here.
It's my pleasure. Now, before we record, and I hope I can say this, before we started recording, you said that you biked. It's, just so people know, it's 9:09 in the morning on a Tuesday.
Right.
And you rode 65 miles on your bike today.
Yes. Well, I have an indoor bike.
Oh, well, that's even more impressive.
Yeah.
Because that requires mental fortitude.
Sure.
How do you keep yourself entertained for 65? I mean, is it about entertainment? Maybe that's my problem. But 65 miles indoor.
I on my bike, I have set up with my heart rate.
Sure.
Different watts.
Yeah.
So I have a prescribed workout.
Yeah.
And so I'll do a minute at a certain wattage.
Yeah.
Keep my heart rate, and then I back off for 15 seconds. So
you're doing some hits, some high intensity interval trainings.
Not high intensity when I'm doing a long workout.
Sure.
Thursday is an intense one where I get way up there. But
and may I ask, how old are you?
65.
That's really inspiring.
Yeah.
That's great.
Right.
That's awesome. I mean, it's good. It's good to talk to people that, they take care of themselves no matter what stage of life they're in. That's amazing. I hope that when I'm your age, I can be, I still exercise today, but if I can ride 65 miles when I'm 65, I think I'm doing pretty good.
Well, I swim, bike, or run, depending on the day.
So you're a triathlete.
Right.
Okay. What's your strongest one?
The race doesn't really start until the second half of the run. So, it's a 2.5 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26 mile run.
Yeah.
So while I'm good at all three disciplines, if you try to push it too hard, then when it comes to the run, regardless of how good you are, you won't do very well.
You do Ironman distance.
Yeah, I'll be doing my 65th one.
What?
In September. Yeah.
Chairman Gates, you're embarrassing me a little bit. I did triathlons in high school. I never did a full Ironman. I was more the Olympic distance was my specialty. But I mean, okay, well, we didn't come here to talk about triathlons and Ironmans, but I will just say it's very impressive. I hope that you keep that up. You should be proud of yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So it's May 20th. I know that, what is it? Sine D? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, Sine Die.
Sine Die. There we go. I always get it mixed up. Sine Die. I know that's coming up. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, with every single representative, every senator, they have legislation that they author and put forth, and some of it keeps going, some of it goes forward, some of it dies. I want to also talk about housing finance corporations, HB 21 specifically from you. But before we get to HB 21, just more generally, what is some of your, surely not everything that you've authored has gone forward. Some of it has. Of your priority legislation, or the legislation that you've authored, the stuff that's gone forward, what are you most proud of? The stuff that, has died?
Right.
What do you want to bring back next session?
Yeah, I've been, until the session's over and we see what the governor signs.
Sure.
So far, this has been a fairly successful session for me.
Well, that's great.
My top bill was expanding vocational training.
Okay.
We kind of, our vocational training in our high schools right now are sort of a joke. You can earn in high school what's called a CTE certificate, or an IBC, industry-based credential. But it's sort of set up where, because we offer bonuses for each IBC that's issued, schools have used it as a funding mechanism, and the top IBC that's issued is in floral design or Microsoft Word. And so, like in my district in Fort Bend County, the three school districts offered, in the last data that I had, 1,550 certificates in floral design. And I looked it up on Google, and there were only 23 flower shops in Fort Bend County. And I looked on the Texas Workforce Commission, there's only one job opening for $31,000. But they earn up to a $5,000 bonus.
Yeah.
So, I have a business, several hundred employees, and I can't find more plumbers and electricians, and it doesn't matter what industry you go into, we have a severe shortage of critical skilled labor, whether it's in working in power plants, working for electric companies, or plumbing, electrician. The average age of a master plumber or master electrician in Texas is 59, 60 years old.
Yeah.
So what my bill does is make it full-time for 11th to 12th graders, where you could actually go to, say, a Texas State Technical College campus or a community college full-time as 11th and 12th graders if you decide to go into this program. And so I've been trying for 3 sessions. The governor made it a priority issue, and I got a priority number, HB 20. So right now it's sitting, we passed it out of the House, and now it's sitting over in the Senate, and Senator Schwartner is carrying it, and I'm hoping that it gets introduced in public education over there here in the next day or two.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Head to the governor.
So you say that 11th and 12th graders, they can go into this program full time if they choose to. What are so does it focus on things like electricians, plumbers? Does it go further into that? I don't know. Some sort of not an engineer necessarily, but your chip manufacturing, stuff like that. I know Samsung has a new plant in Taylor, Texas. There's AI and data centers. They're going to need employees and specialty skills. What sort of vocational skills does it focus on? And if they go into it 11th, 12th grade, do they skip out on, I don't know, senior English?
What this bill does is it allows the commissioner to replace, let's say, you would have, before you enter the program, you got to have 3 maths. So you would take 2 before you enter the program. Your 3rd math, the commissioner could replace it with the math that's applicable to the field career that you're going to go into.
Makes sense.
And same thing, can replace one of the required subjects. So English, your last English would be in some kind of research writing that's applicable to the career instead of taking the English over. And so it would be an equivalent, but it would be a program that's tailored to whatever career that you're deciding to go into. And these careers are not the old traditional shop class. These are many of the labor that's needed now in manufacturing does require a high skill level because you're dealing with a lot of robotics and a lot of computer and programming. But it's focused on, it's with the cooperation of Texas Workforce Commission, the careers, and working with them and Commissioner Morath, TEA. We picked careers that one, don't need a college education, and 2, have a starting salary if you get what's called Level 1, Level 2 certificate, which is what you earn if you graduate from Texas State Technical College.
Yep.
You go into a job market at around a $70,000 starting salary and can be 6 figures in 3 to 5 years. Yeah. And so it's limited to those kind of careers.
Okay. So just sort of, playing with this idea, going forward, if I'm a senior, junior in high school, I decide to do this program for, I don't know, electrician, plumber, doesn't matter what it is. I do that for 10, 15 years, and I decide I want to do a career change. Do I have a high school diploma to maybe re-enter into like a college, university? Do I need to, or is it a different type of diploma?
Well, 50% of kids in our high schools do not even go to college.
Well, that's true, yeah.
And of the ones that go to college, these are statistics for Texas. Only 50% get a degree within 5 years.
Yeah.
And only 15% of students that get a degree wind up in a field that's applicable to that degree.
Yeah.
But yet we have $1.6 trillion in student debt.
Yeah.
And most of the degrees that they earn, colleges are in the business for basically one thing, that's to sell degrees.
Yeah.
And they'll sell silly, stupid, useless degrees that won't put you on a productive path
to
a career. So with all of that, this bill, you come out of high school with a high school diploma. And most of the students that would enter that go to Texas State Technical College actually take a 2-year junior college at the same time. And you almost would be able to come out with an associate degree along with what's called Level 1, Level 2 certificate. So people who think that this is actually less qualifications they don't understand what this program is.
Sure.
Most of our students that come out of high school today with a diploma, supposedly with all the math and the English, if they go to college, they always have to have remedial classes.
Yeah.
And why is that if they're actually taking calculus and all of that.
Yeah.
And most of the students that come out of high school with just a high school diploma have no skills and no ability to really go into the job market other than flipping hamburgers.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure. If you're 18 and you go, you get some sort of certificate or some training to go and start a career right away, I think that's a positive. And, figuring it out down the line, if you change your mind to do something else, they can still do that, obviously. I didn't realize that only 50% of high school graduates in Texas actually go on to college. I would have just assumed it's so much higher. Not because, I don't know, I just feel like everyone that I went to high school with went to college. And so I'm just like in my little bubble here in my mind. But you're right. The college degree that I got, luckily I don't have any college debt. I don't use that degree at all.
That's right.
So here I am, but I love what I do. So I'm happy with it. I'm happy with my path. Let's talk about the Housing Finance Corporations, HB 21. So Housing Finance Corporation, correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially a special corporation that gets tax abatements for offering low-income housing, is the idea, correct?
Yeah. We have basically two different pathways you can try to get affordable housing, and in return, the state of Texas will allow you to exempt your property taxes. So my first session, I had looked at a study that was done by Heather Way, a professor over at UT Law, and her class had done a study on what was called public facility corporations, PFCs. And in that study, it showed around 20 complexes that have received a property tax exemption, but it didn't appear that they were really providing any affordable housing. They were still able to charge basically market rent. That's what interested me in the subject. And because I come from the industry, I own a number of apartment complexes, and I thought this was rather strange that you could get a property tax exemption under the theory that you're going to provide affordable housing, but you were still charging the same rent as what I could, and I'm paying property taxes.
Yeah.
So in my second session, there was a bill called HB 2071 that I worked on, and we did a lot of reforms to the PFC model, which is Chapter 303 of our local government code.
Okay.
So we thought we had fixed that problem, but the industry knew where they were going to go, and the moment that legislation was signed, they pivoted to what's called the HFC, and that's Housing Finance Corporation. That's under Chapter 394. And it's even worse because it has no guidelines. It has no definition. Even though it uses the word low or moderate, you're going to provide low or moderate housing, you get to decide what that is. So someone up in Dallas may decide that moderate affordable housing is $2,000 a unit rent.
Yeah.
And what they learn is they set it to where the definition for low and moderate, it changes for each project. It's always above the market rate. So they never have to, as long as they keep it at or below that level, then they get the 100% property tax exemption, but you get to pick what that level is.
Yeah.
So they always pick a level that's above the market rate. And so they are never providing any affordable housing. So what started with 20 projects, basically in 2020, by the time we did the PFC reform, there's probably about 100, 125 projects. Between 23 and today, over 300 additional projects throughout the state of Texas have received an HFC exemption.
Yeah.
And what's really been bad is these housing finance corporations, it has to be set up by a government entity. So you started having, say, Cameron County and Pecos County started setting up an HFC, and an owner would go and let them be sort of the government entity, and they'd go up to Dallas and wipe out the property taxes and so those were called traveling HFCs.
Yeah.
And the people in Dallas had no say-so. They would just one day find out that this complex was not paying property taxes. They started noticing that their demands for government services was increasing, whether it's police or fire or whatever, emergency services, but yet their income wasn't going up, and they saw the population. And then they started finding out that all these apartment complexes were being wiped off. And so just in the last 4 years, over $15 billion has been wiped out in assessed values and these exemptions are for 99 years.
So, I mean, that's there's a lot of interesting stuff there. So, I mean, I guess the traveling portion answers my first question. I was going to ask who's approving this stuff. If there's no, if I started a housing finance corporation last year, if I can set the rate, like if I did that here in Austin, if I set the rate above the affordable, like above market rate or at market rate or whatever, it's not affordable by any stretch of the imagination, or what the city of Austin would want as affordable. My question would be, why would the city of Austin approve that?
Well, and that's the thing. The cities had no say-so.
Right.
So if Pecos County or Cameron County was let's call it the sponsor.
Sure.
They would tell the owner, okay, we want an upfront fee.
Okay.
And so the owner, usually these deals were structured with around $1 million upfront fee that the Pecos County would get on each project.
Okay.
So because you wipe out the property taxes, if you had to pay your property taxes, and with the income, you might be able to borrow $20 million on a typical 200 or 300 unit complex. But when you wipe out the property taxes, the lender will loan you a lot more because you have a lot more available cash to pay toward debt service. So on these typical deals, instead of $20 million, you could borrow $30 million.
Yeah.
So with that extra $10 million they would borrow, that's what they would give, say, $1 million to the HFC, the Pecos County or whoever set it up.
Yeah.
That's where they would get an upfront fee. Then with the attorneys and all that, they would take another $500,000.
So what is I mean, I guess the $1 million is probably the answer, but the question is, what incentivizes Pecos County to, I don't know, I'll call it economic warfare for lack of a better word, but like, why would they do that to Travis County? All right, they get $1 million, but that's not that much money, like in the grand scheme of a county. What does that really do? It maybe fills a gap for a small budget gap for like 1 year, maybe two, if it's a really small county. That seems like a small pittance to like really mess up your Texan neighbors.
Well, it's pure greed, because why does the developer do it?
Sure.
And put the burden on the other taxpayers by wiping out their property taxes. It's pure greed.
Yeah.
And so Pecos County is only a population of 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And when you start doing $1 million a pop, and all of a sudden you do 50 of them, 75 of them over a 2-year period, plus they work out a deal with the owner and say, okay, if you're going to wipe out your property taxes, we want the $1 million up front, and then we want 10% of what you would have normally have been paying your property taxes as an ongoing fee. And so now they've got this annuity coming in. And if the average deal is $1.2 million in property taxes, so Pecos County now is getting $120,000 a year for each deal that's been done. You multiply that by 100 projects, and now you're looking at about $12 million a year in a county that only has 20,000 people.
I mean, I hope those 20,000 people are really benefiting from that $12 million a year. I mean, they shouldn't. It sounds like ill-gotten gains, however legal it has been. I mean, are they getting like a fancy water slide or a water park out there for all this money? Like, what do they get? Is Pecos County really hurting for that much money? Or is it go straight into their budget, into their general fund?
I haven't done an investigation.
Sure.
But because once other counties and other cities started seeing what Pecos County or Cameron County were doing, very quickly, other places started getting in on the game.
Yeah.
So you had the city of Pleasanton, and there's now, I think, 6 or 7 that are doing these traveling HFCs because it's very lucrative. And so now they go and advertise, hey, we'll take your property. Now, this has gotten into a fever pitch.
Yeah.
And now I've done this summer, I hired my own attorneys, and we came up with a brief to the Attorney General that now is in the hands of the AG, saying that this is unconstitutional and that you cannot, someone from Pecos County cannot go 400 miles up the road and wipe out the property taxes in Dallas and never even tell them.
Yeah.
That's unconstitutional.
Sounds like it.
So Now the AG is going through that, is looking at that. That has, in 2 cities, Arlington and Williamson County, used my brief, and they were able to go get a TRO, a temporary restraining order, to stop some of these traveling HFCs from wiping out their property taxes. So it's coming to a very fast stop just on that route. Now, HB 21, which has now been gone through the House and the Senate and is sitting on the governor's desk right now.
Yeah.
Now, what that's going to do is the court system may determine that it may void all those HFCs, traveling HFCs.
Yeah.
And that is going to create a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
Because lenders have loaned on these things based on never paying property taxes.
Yeah.
You have to start paying. Under the court case, you may have to pay back all the property taxes exemptions that you got. Now, what my legislation does is you cannot retroactively go back. That would be unconstitutional under legislation. But what it says is the traveling ones, those properties have 18 months to go and sign an agreement with the city of where they operated to be able to continue to operate.
Yeah.
Because we're saying you can't do that. The legislation was never set up that way.
Yeah.
If you can't get an agreement, then you're going to lose your exemption going forward.
Yeah.
This gives the cities incredible power. The other thing it says is even if you are legitimately set up, let's say you did it in District 1, you're going to have 10 years to come into compliance with the new terms. And what my legislation does is it says 50%, you're going to have to demonstrate in the audit that 50% of your tax exemption is actually going to lowering rents below the market rate.
Yep.
That's create a lot of chaos in the industry.
Sure.
But you got to understand this. Now imagine if you own your own home and you pay property taxes.
Yeah. I wish I didn't, but yeah.
Okay. And let's say the state of Texas comes up and offers you a deal and says, okay, write 2 checks for your property taxes when they're due. 50% you write to a rent relief program. The other 50% you write to the taxing authorities. If we can verify that the check clears to the rent subsidy program, we'll let you void the other check and you don't have to send it in. Would you take that deal?
Yes, I think. Yeah.
Yes, everyone would.
Sure.
So the industry.
I felt like it was a trick question somehow.
No.
Yeah. I mean, 50% off my property taxes, done.
That's all my legislation does.
Okay.
But it is creating unbelievable chaos right now. They are fighting tooth and nail.
Yeah.
And so it begs the question is if 50% you had to demonstrate it's going, if that creates chaos, what were you offering?
Yeah.
And that, what my study has shown, that they were not paying any property taxes or they were not giving any rent relief.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they have to go, I understand the motivation of the bill, and it certainly sounds like there's a lot of bad actors, both in the county level, say Pecos or whatever, and other places. We don't mean to pick on Pecos, but it sounds like they've been maybe culprit number one. And some bad actors on the corporate side and the builder side doing all this stuff. If the builders have to go, or the owners of the complexes, the HFCs, if they're charging market rate anyway, then, having to pay property taxes if they can't come to a deal or whatever, that doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world.
No, but the people who used this tool, they were, because of the rise of interest rates, people were stuck in loans that they could not get out of.
Yeah.
And they were, let's call it, in this industry, they're called bridge loans.
Yeah.
And they're a much higher interest rate. Well, to be able to get that loan, the only way they could do it was wiping out the property taxes and having extra cash flow, and they borrowed a lot more money.
Yeah.
Now, if they had to start paying taxes, they no longer meet the debt coverage ratio that's required to pay debt service at that high level.
Yeah.
And that's where they're going to have a struggle, is being able to make the mortgage payments if all of a sudden they had to start paying their property taxes, because they borrowed that extra money and pocketed it and spent it elsewhere.
Maybe a fancy dinner. Who knows?
That's right.
Yeah. So, there's obviously bad actors, but I think there's probably some good actors. I talked to Representative Bojani some time ago, John Wallace out of Houston, about specifically housing finance corporations. There's certainly bad actors, as you've described. I think there's probably some good actors out there too that are, trying to do the right thing and not playing the system and getting an exemption out of Pecos and building in Houston or building in Dallas or whatever the case may be. But it sounds like, some of those good actors might be, I don't know, getting caught in the crossfire a little bit. Is there anything for them to do? Like, how are they going to respond to this?
If a lot of them have been supportive of my bill, because when they go in and say, look, we want to actually provide affordable housing.
Yeah.
And they suffer an income loss, there's not as much money there to offer a Pecos County this $1 million fee and whatever the annual cut is.
Yeah.
And those people, this legislation actually was creating less affordable housing because the people who want to do it right, the people who setting these up, and even the HFCs inside their own district, this industry has really gotten to where it's not a big industry, and they become greedy in trying to get these big upfront fees to fund other things.
Yeah.
And so when an owner, the only way you can do that is you have to allow that owner to not really, he's got to keep more of what he would normally pay so he can, let's say, give a kickback or whatever you want to call it to the HFC. And so the people who want to do it right, they don't have enough money left to do that. So they were being sort of shoved out of the market.
Yeah.
Because the only way everyone can make all this money is if there was no rent relief.
Yeah.
So the good actors have actually been pushed off to the side. Now, we also have another program called LIHTC, Low Income Tax Credits.
Yeah.
And those are done through our Texas Department of Community Housing.
Yep.
Our bill exempts all of that.
Okay.
Because that is true affordable housing, but you're under a lot of federal guidelines, and you're already under the guidelines of oversight of Texas Department of Community Housing. So we exempted all of those people.
I think in this, talking about this, it sounds like there's part of the problem might be a lack of transparency, right? And that, this stuff is happening in Pecos County, but they're building in Dallas and nobody knows anything. And how, if I'm a citizen of Dallas, I might be interested in that, right? Or if I was a citizen of Pecos, then I guess I'm happy my county's getting more money, but I still might be interested where the money's coming from. Is there added transparency? I mean, obviously there's going to be some because the new requirements, people are going to have to figure this out. But, my understanding is that there's I think the meetings now have to be subject to open records. Is that correct?
Yes, but the real transparency comes now that you enter this program. And this is something that even the existing ones going forward, you're going to have to be subject to an audit.
Yeah.
And that audit is got to be turned in. You got to have a third party do the audit, and then it's going to be reviewed by Texas Department of Community Housing. And you have to demonstrate that you actually are giving 50% below the market rate at your complex. The industry doesn't like that because they just want to because that's going to shed light on just how bad these deals really are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't have any of these deals, and I would hate to be audited. So I could understand that, but I'm not doing bad things, and so if I did bad things, then I'm sure I would really hate to be audited. Do you think that obviously there's a difference between new builds and refurbished builds? If someone takes like an old Section 8 housing and spruces it up, cleans it up, adds new floor, maybe some sort of upgrades in here and there to make it more livable to current standards. Do you think that those should be treated differently?
Well, if they're a low income tax credit, that is different. But some people said, look, I want to buy this property that needs some rehab, and I would like to use the money I do as rehab as a public benefit. I want that to count toward my 50%.
Okay.
The silliness of that ideal is, first of all, I go and I compete to buy the same property.
Yeah.
So each of us is going to pay the same thing for the property.
Yeah.
Each of us is going to do the same rehab. Now, if we wind up charging the same rent, why should they get 100% property tax exemption?
That's an excellent question.
It's
Sure.
It's a silly proposition
Yeah.
that is trying to trick the public that somehow they're doing something noble by fixing up. When you buy a distressed property, you're already buying it at a significant discount. And so you're motivated from a profit standpoint. The whole thing is to provide rents to people that normally cannot live there. And you're going to, by transferring part of your property taxes, the whole goal was you take some of that property taxes and reduce some rents below what would normally be paid.
Sure.
That's what the goal is. This nonsense that I'm going to do rehab. Well, we all had to do rehab.
Yeah.
Going forward, if a hurricane comes or a tornado and both our roofs are damaged, we both are going to spend the same amount of money fixing that roof up.
Yeah. But
you should not be able to continue to charge the same rent as me when I'm paying 100% property taxes.
Yeah, I can understand that. Is there anything else on HFCs that you wanted to talk about?
Well, no.
We talked about a lot, but I think we kind of covered it. But I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't leaving anything out. I wanted to ask you one last question before we sign off. I want to be respectful of your time as well. You're the chairman of the Land and Resource Management Committee. Is this your first time being chairman of a committee?
Yes.
How's that been? What's it like being a chairman?
It's been great. My wheelhouse is kind of geared or fit toward the issues that come up with the Land Resource Committee. So it's our main goal has actually been trying to, every bill, every law that's passed, every bill that's passed, it gives power to something at the expense of freedom and liberty to someone else.
Sure.
And so what I've been about trying to do with this committee is trying to take basically oversight and regulatory hurdles that actually increase the cost of building. And by reducing that regulatory authority, you're sort of taking some authority from the cities to give more, now not necessary oversight by the city, but let's say one popular we're trying to do is if the city cannot do inspections in a certain period of time, then you can have a third party do the inspection. Yeah. They still have to do it to the same level as the city. Sure. But the free market, if you can go to the free market, you might be able to do an inspection in 8 hours versus sometimes the city takes a week or 2 weeks. If not more sometimes, right. And that increases the cost because time is the most expensive factor in trying to build. Yeah. So you still give the city later on, if they find out something was done wrong, they still have the authority to issue citations and all that. Yeah. But if we can speed up the process in the meantime, that cities hate that because they like having total control, but they don't understand that, they're oblivious sometimes to the cost factor of time. And so, well, they complain about affordable housing all the time and how the affordability crisis, it sounds like if, the time aspect of building is so expensive, if we can cut that down, then maybe they'll get their wish too of more affordable housing. That's right. So, well, Chairman Gary Gates of House District 28, I really appreciate you taking the time. Do you have any social media or website that you wanted to plug? No. Okay. Well, we'll find out. I know you have a website, but we'll find it. We'll put it down in the description below. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.